raise your hand. Our mobile microphone person will run over to you. We ask that you do state who the question is for.
Hello, my name is Mark Jessup, and the question I have for both candidates, as you are aware, of course, with the change in climate, alternative energy, which both of you spoke to, is a very important thing.
Yeah, talking about that one.
Are you aware of how alternatives are funded? What do you see that you might be able to accomplish, sorry about that, might be able to accomplish in the term? And I know that one gentleman has spoken repeatedly about the limitations of a 2-year term. So where do you see this going during that 2 years? Will there be progress? When will funding come down? And who will it go to?
Alida Skold, can you answer first?
Thank you. So the funding of alternative energy sources, that would be something that could be funded through the infrastructure bank and the public-private partnership. We don't have to have the actual bank established in order to have a public-private partnership. So let me explain a little bit what that is, the 3 Ps. That means that public funds, the government, would fund the renewables, but they wouldn't be able to fund all of it, so we would ask private money to come in and invest in it as well. So then it's a partnership. And so that's where some of the funding would come from. And then in addition, we have research going on, and we have businesses that are investing in that. So right now, solar is is becoming more affordable. It's almost at equal with fossil fuels, and so as it continues that direction, we'll have more people investing in it, and we'll have more opportunities as well.
Alida Ramos.
So my understanding of the question is funding for alternative energy sources, is that correct? Okay. We got to look at solar, wind, and tidal, not just a couple. We got to look at a few different sources of alternative energy. In Eastern Washington, we do a lot of wind power, and there's plenty of sun. Believe me, I've been over there. It's hot. Where the funding is going to come in, we can do. This is where I guess the tax breaks come in from the conservative side. Is you stimulate the private sector by giving them tax breaks, incentives to be able to fund them. And we can start by looking at reducing some of the we got to reduce all the tax credits for the current oil companies and shifting that over to wind, solar, and tidal, because we need to save the planet. I mean, my generation's coming up. I see my nieces and nephews, and we got to give them a better world than what we found it.
Okay, my name is Kate Harper, and I have so many questions, but I'd like to go back to one of the ones that both of you, I feel, kind of dodged the bullet on, and that is homelessness of the Native American population. You talked about the future and what you can do for people through education and through all that, but it's been proven that you cannot cure homelessness without central services. So how would each of you address that issue in that way?
Alida Ramos.
Thank you, Kate, for the question. I was chair of the Human Services Committee for 4 years in the city of Kirkland. I saw that issue not just with Native Americans, but with people in the east side. Everybody believes that Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, there's a lot of money, but there's a lot of homeless problems there as well. And I've been working to do what I can to make sure we can get the funds that were allocated for me. Now, with this position, I'm going to be able to decide how much funds are going to be able to go into those projects. And I will, housing and food have always been on top of my agenda. So I will look at ways to increase the funding right off the bat, because that's one of the jobs as a congressman is bring home the bacon. And that's what I'm going to do to help out the grants.
Alida Skold.
Thank you for the question. It is an issue, homelessness. It's an issue for Native Americans that Gosh, I'm sorry, I feel very strongly about the issue, so I get a little bit choked up when I talk about it. So a lot of times it has to do with mental health issues as well as addiction. And so we need to have the services, the health care for them. We need to provide housing for them. But something we need to think about as well, we want to solve housing, the homelessness in Seattle. We have a huge problem with that. If we do that only in Seattle, the next wave will come to Seattle, and then we have to do it all over again. It needs to be done on a national level. And so that, as a congresswoman, I could help do that. And so we need to provide housing services for all of the people who are homeless, and healthcare services for them, and then jobs as well. And to provide housing for them, that's less expensive than to have the emergency services that it takes to take care of them while they're living on the street. So it makes much more sense to do that on a national level.
Can I ask a question? We have a minute to respond, right? I just want to make sure I'm clear. I don't remember how much the rules work. We have a minute to respond?
Minute to respond.
Oh, perfect. Just want to make that clear.
Good evening. I have two questions, one for each candidate. For candidate Skold, you mentioned in your response to the question about shootings of African Americans inside the United States that the police departments need to meet the racial makeup of their communities. Would you support legislation requiring racial quotas in police departments across the United States? And for candidate Ramos? All right, yeah.
So racial quotas, when you start getting into quotas, the best way to try to accomplish a goal is to put numbers to it. So you're putting numbers to the racial quotas, and that is a tangible goal. So yes, I would support that, because that's the best way to say, okay, we have this percentage of African Americans in our community. We need that relative percentage in law enforcement as well. So yes, that makes sense.
And for candidate Ramos, you mentioned that we should base the minimum wage off of what the government studies and finds as what the cost of living is in that location. The federal government has done this research and has found that it costs around $15,260 a year to survive as a single individual. You argue that we should raise the minimum wage to $10, $11, $12, even $14 an hour. Based on what studies are you coming to this conclusion, other than $15 is what is normally thrown around in discussion?
I haven't looked at any studies. I have talked to some folks, I'm going to be honest. I've talked to some folks about the minimum wage and looked at, what is appropriate for each area. And what I can tell you is, as a congressman, you're going to make laws that affect the entire country, not just a certain area. So when I said that I wanted to get a minimum wage to be incremental, I think we can look at Washington as a example for the country. And I want to use that example, let's see where we can come up to an agreement. I mean, you can go for 15, 12, or 10, but what is going to be an actual agreement between the Republicans and Democrats? Because you cannot go for all or nothing. So let's see what we can do, but make sure it's incremental so we don't have to come back and fight for it every time.